everyone, it's Lynn Wilson at Lynn Wilson Originals here in Mills River, North Carolina, and today we are putting the finishing touches on our Eastlake chair. So it's painted, the seat and everything has been reupholstered, and now we're going to put some welting on. We added the welting through here, and what that is, now these chairs, a lot of times when you see them in thrift stores, they have gimp, which is sort of a ribbon around it. But I like to put this kind of welting on. I think it looks a little bit more modern, particularly with this fabric. This is a fabric from Smith Honig. I have a foot on I have an industrial sewing machine. Although this fabric is really nice, you would not even need an industrial sewing machine for this fabric. So what you do is you go through, and when you do double welting, you're going to cut a piece of fabric that's 3 inches wide, and you fold it over, and you run it through your machine, and you sew down the middle. Like I said, I have a special foot that keeps this in place, so it makes it super easy. But if you're a good seamstress, you can do it with a walking foot. So once you get that done, then you flip it again, and you sew down the middle again, and then you cut off this excess. So this fabric is really thin, so when I flipped it, I didn't have to cut anything. But a lot of times if you're using heavy upholstery fabric, you're gonna have to like cut some of your fabric out, because when you flip it, it's just too thick. So let's go ahead and get started. Like I said, I've done the front. I'm gonna flip to the back. And this is, I put a link to my Amazon shop, and that's where I have all my upholstery stuff that I use. This is just a Surebonder regular craft glue gun. It has high and low speeds, but I always leave it on high. And I use that same brand of glue as well. So here's a piece of my cording, and it's been cut down. And now the first thing I'm gonna do is, and I should have done this before I got on, pull my stitches out at the very beginning. So you just want to wiggle it down a little bit so that you can cut off this tip of your welting. Because what you're gonna do is wrap it up like a little birthday present. So I'd probably have to cut a little bit more to be able to cover that end up. Okay, that's gonna do it. So now what I can do is I can just fold this over, put a spot of glue, and that will be what it looks like once I cut off the little strings. When I start, I like to start down at the bottom middle. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this covered first. And I try to cut off these little fringy places. Once you make your cording, sometimes your fabric will start to, just fray. It's not going to fray because you've got your stitches in, but it's just easier to try to cut these off before you glue it on than have them sticking out and try to cut close. And now it's easier to lay your chair down and do it that way, but I also find that I like doing it with the chair up, because that's how the chair is going to be seen. And so sometimes when I lay it down, I think I've got my staples covered, but from looking down on it, you can still see my staples. So the whole point of this is to cover your staples. So I'm just going to line it up to the centerpiece up here. There's a little ball. So, and I'm just going to get it started. And what I do is I try to like work out a little ways and see how it's going to line up, and that way I can see if maybe I didn't cut my fabric close enough. Right here I can see I need to cut this a little bit closer. And I spared you guys watching me cut this fabric close to the staples because that can actually take quite a while. It probably took me about an hour yesterday to go over everywhere. And then I also like to kind of look at how my corner's gonna work and get my cording kind of moving in that direction. It's just the first time I ever did a chair was in a class, and they're like, okay, just, you know, grab your glue gun, and they showed us how to make the welting. They're like, okay, just grab your glue gun and glue it on. And so I like didn't check ahead of time. So I'm gluing along and I'm missing some of my staples. I've got fabric underneath. So now I always make sure that once I apply my glue, it's looking good. And even like as I'm cutting my fabric back, I take a piece of cording that I've completed and go around and make sure that I'm going to cover my staples and the fabric's cut back far enough. And so I'm just kind of aiming my glue over the staples. Another thing that you can do if you don't like how your corners are or where you meet in the middle is just take a little upholstery tack and tack it in. It also is kind of decorative. But I don't know if you can see there's a staple a little bit to the inside here, so what I'm going to make sure that I press that edge in to cover this staple. And if you get some glue on your fabric, you can usually just wait for it to dry and then try to pull it off. Fortunately, you know, the glue is clear. So if you are doing it standing up, like I'm doing right now, and you know, I mentioned previously, it's easier to do it laying down, but I like to be able to see that what I'm gonna see when the chair is actually in use. But particularly across the top here, you need to make sure you don't put too much glue that it starts dripping. So I just go in short little increments. And this is, like I said, this fabric is from Smith Honig, and it's called their Moroccan Knot. It's really nice to work with. And the chair is painted in Dixie Belle's Flamingo, which is kind of a coral, this coral color. And I plan to put some white wax over it. So now as I come around, you know, I'm gonna get my corner here first. Pull it down a little. And when I cut it, hopefully I have enough for the bottom, yes. When I cut it, I'm gonna cut beyond where I want it to end. So I'm not gonna cut right here where it ends. I'm gonna cut a little bit further so that I have that extra material to wrap it around and cover the end. And so when I'm sewing my double welting or any welting, what I do is I take a rough measurement of everywhere around the chair, And then, you know, I take my strips of material like this. So say this is one end. I've already got this side sewn, but this is the, say this is another piece. You put them together like that. And sew on the diagonal, so you get this one long strip, so that you're not having to kind of measure for each little area. You make one long strip and then use it for the whole chair. And I'm going to stop gluing right about here. So that I can open this up with my seam ripper. And the other thing I should mention, when you're doing, before you do your welting, and like I said, when I'm cutting my material back to the staples, I look to see that I'm going to have a straight line, because sometimes you might get higher on one end with your staples and slant down. So then I go back and I put my staples so that I know that my cording is going to look straight. So now I'm going to take out these stitches again. All right, so I'm pulling it back to expose the cording. I'm going to have to do a little bit more. All right, that should do it. And I'm going to cut a little bit shy because I need to leave enough room for my fabric to fold over. So my cord's not going to meet exactly. There's going to be just a hair. So I have room to fold this down and under. And I also, sometimes what I do is, if you fold it under, see, you can get, it's, you know, it can be like too thick and you have this extras on the sides. What I'll do is I'll cut some underneath, so it comes to kind of a point. So I'm not having to, there's not so much bulk underneath. So I'll go ahead and turn it under. And then I'll finish the last bit of gluing. So, there we have it. We've got our welting now on the back. I'll finish up this last little bit down at the bottom. And I'll be posting this on my Instagram page probably tomorrow, and Facebook. If you're not already following me on either of those, I'd really appreciate it if you would. It's Lynn Wilson Originals, Lynn with one N. All you guys who are watching, I really appreciate your support, and hope you have a great rest of the day. Bye-bye.